So I am going to throw it over to Commissioner Britz to give us a little opening statement, and then we will start answering questions, as we already have several that have been emailed into us. So Commissioner Britz, I'm sending it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Christian, and good evening, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. This is the third one of these that we've done. We've gotten some pretty good feedback from the first two, and we feel it is important to try to stay open and as transparent as possible with how we are planning to participate this fall, not only from an athletic standpoint, but just attending colleges on our campuses. I will be honest, I'm not as optimistic about the fall season as I was the last time we visited. A lot has changed, not for the positive, in my opinion. The announcement by the Ivy League earlier today and the Centennial Conference yesterday, which is a Division III conference up in the Northeast, has certainly changed the dynamics a little bit. We are still working hard as a league across the board. We're still working diligently. We want to try to figure out a way that our student athletes can not only participate in their sports safely, but that all of our students on our campuses can attend college in a safe manner. So we are continuing to work together as a group to try to figure that out. We developed a task force when all this first started in late March, and they had been on the shelf, so to speak, for the last several weeks. We thought we might have done what we needed to with that group, but we actually convened again today, and we've started talking about things such as, minimum standards as far as guidelines, principles. We're using NCAA as a guide for that. We are using the Knight Commission, which is at least some statements and some guidance. So we are just sort of trying to cover as many things as we can and be as consistent as we can, even though we are all, we're in 4 different states within this. So everyone has some different guidelines and standards within their own state and local governments. For example, here in South Carolina, York County just mandated a mask requirement in public spaces, which we had never done before when this started. I know Mecklenburg County and Charlotte's had that, for a while. Virginia is still in somewhat of a travel ban situation. So, we just have all sorts of things going on, and it really is a moving target. As of now, though, I can tell you we are planning on, starting the school year. Everyone is pretty much around that August 17th start date. That has not changed to my knowledge. We do have a president's call this Friday, and I'm sure that will be discussed, but to my knowledge, none of the institutions have changed that. And we're still scheduled to start playing competition in sports on September 3rd. Now, is that going to change in the next couple of weeks? Excuse me, it very well could. I'm hoping it doesn't, but the whole point of these Zoom Q&As is to be as open and transparent as possible without, sounding doom and gloom, or that we're, just going to ignore everything and charge forward and play. So that's where we are right now. Again, certainly not as optimistic as I was 5-6 weeks ago when I used my Jaws line that we will be open for business. And I think we will be open for business. I just don't know to what extent at this point and when we will actually be able to start competing. So Christian, I know you said you had a lot of questions. I don't want to cut those off. So I'll stop rambling at this point and be happy to answer as many questions as I can.
All right, sounds great. And for those of you who have questions, you can send those in through the chat feature. You can just send them to me, and I'll get them get those answered for you. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We did get one. I've gotten several throughout the last week or two that we announced this, and I'll just do this one from Aubrey Guyton, who is a wondering about golf. Since golf is technically a spring sport championship, but they compete with their tournaments in the fall. They normally play 4 tournaments in the fall and then 5 in the spring. Is there expected to be any change to their schedule?
That's an interesting question because we actually, as a commissioners group, we've started the conversation. I don't know how much legs it's going to have or where it's going to go, but we've actually started the conversation about would it be possible to move sports like golf and tennis, softball and baseball that don't have a lot of contact. Would it be possible to move their seasons from the spring to the fall? Given the current situation. I don't know how realistic that is, but there has been that conversation. For a conference perspective, though, the only thing we really are involved with from a golf standpoint is our golf championship, our conference championship, which the women is scheduled for the first part of April, pardon me, and the men are shortly thereafter. I think Easter's in between this year. At this time, that schedule has not been adjusted. So I do think you're still going to have some fall events, assuming we can play some fall sports in golf. And then, God willing, we'll be able to pick up in the spring with the consistent spring schedule from a golf standpoint.
Thank you, sir. Our next question comes from Kevin Eagle. It's a cross-country specific question. As North Carolina is currently limiting outdoor groups to just 25 people. Is there a backup plan for the SAC Cross Country Championship if the state of North Carolina has crazy limitations and they're no longer able to hold competitions coming in October?
Now, there is no specific backup plan, but as we get closer to, I think that's around October 26th, somewhere in that range. As we get closer to that, if there has not been a change, requirements from North, we adjust that if we have to. We're hoping we don't have to, but I would say, Kevin, around early mid-September, if we're still in the same situation from a North Carolina standpoint, then we would certainly start looking for additional locations, alternate locations, pardon me, if we're able to do it. From a cross-country perspective, though, the start and the finish of a cross-country champion. But, the start and the finish of a cross-country meet are probably 2 of the most susceptible situations from a virus standpoint. So we may have to, even if we're able to compete, we may have to have some sort of alternate start and finish situation. I don't know. We haven't gotten into that level of detail yet, but we will continue to monitor that. And if we're able to have a cross-country championship, and it's not in the state of North Carolina due to the restrictions, we will definitely have one in either Tennessee, South Carolina, or maybe Virginia.
Next, this one's come from Chuck Bitter. Given the current situation, there was talk of shifting fall sports to the spring. Has that prospect been revisited, especially with some of the most recent conferences decisions, including the Centennial and the Ivy League?
Chuck, it has. Those conversations have started back up a little bit. Logistically, I'm not sure how we would be able to manage that as a league, but those conversations have started back up. They just started back up, so I don't have any real specifics to that. But those are something that I think we could look into. The task force today, we even talked about maybe if we're able to play volleyball, field hockey, soccer, cross country in the fall, if we had to move football, just given the nature of that sport, if we had to move that to the spring. We are still monitoring all that, but it has come back up as a conversation.
All right. Our next question comes from Harris H. What's the impact of potentially not having international students all around for SAC sports?
I think that's a pretty significant impact, in particular for certain sports. Is it to the detriment of not even being able to field a roster? I can't answer that because I don't know what each individual school has. from that perspective. But it certainly could impact a lot of our schools from an enrollment standpoint and from an athletics standpoint. It sort of leads me to another conversation that I've had with a lot of people. From a competitive advantage standpoint, I don't think we can worry about that at this point. If best individuals on a particular team are international and they're unable to participate or unable to get back in the country, whatever that may be, I just don't think that's something we need to really focus on right now, because being able to participate and have some semblance of a season and have our schools have some sense of normalcy from a enrollment standpoint and a participation standpoint is extremely important. Keep focusing on that.
Thanks. We had another question from Chuck. Does the NCAA or Division II have a position on whether or not athletics can continue if a campus is conducting virtual instruction only, or would that decision be left to the college or university?
I think that decision would definitely be left with the college or university, or probably a conference-wide perspective. The NCAA has not addressed that at all, and I don't think they will. But given the fact that intercollegiate athletics is part of the fabric of the overall higher educational system, I just would find it hard from an optics standpoint that we would be participating in college athletics if the college itself was closed down or shut down from traditional classes. I just don't know how we would be able to pull that off, but I don't think it's something the NCAA is going to touch. And if we had to address it as a league, we probably would, but I would think most of our presidents would probably not allow that. If they're unable to have traditional classes and normal on-campus activities, I don't see how we would ever be able to compete in athletics at the same time.
Thank you. We did have a question from Todd Graydon. As of now, is everything starting as scheduled?
As of now, yes, everything is on schedule to continue. September 3rd is the start date for some football games. I'm not sure if there's any other competition scheduled for September 3rd, but that is the start date, and that has not been adjusted at this time.
All right. Trying to see. Anybody else have any questions at this point? Oh, wait, sorry. I have one more from Chuck. Sorry. When sports do resume, will there be any standards in place for periodic COVID testing for athletes and staff? And if a athlete or a staff member tests positive, are there standards for how long they will have to wait before they can return?
Those are things we're going to work on in earnest over the next couple of weeks. We will have, I don't know if it's testing or if it'll be contact tracing or screening, but we will certainly have some standards and guidelines and principles. I think, Chuck, to be honest, a lot of that is going to be left up to the individual schools based on their state and local mandates and whatever they feel comfortable doing. But we will, just out of pure safety, health and safety, we'll have to have some sort of minimum standards in place for our schools. But I would think most of our schools, if not all, will probably have more stringent things just from a campus-wide perspective. And also, again, as I said, based on whatever their state and local governments are mandating. But we will have something. We will definitely have something to address that over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, sir. We do have another question here from Caleb Strother. Is there going to be a conference policy in place on how officials will be tested or screened prior to the season?
We've had a conversation with our coordinators of officials, and I would venture to say that the officials, when they step on campus, will be treated like any other visitor on campus, visiting team. If there's a temperature check right off the bat, but obviously, I don't know if we're going to mandate that they have testing or show proof of negative testing before they arrive. I think it's similar to how we're going to treat our visiting teams. If you are getting on the bus and traveling to competition at a visiting away campus, you were essentially saying you're healthy and you feel comfortable going to do that. But we've had conversations with our officials coordinators already about this, and we're asking them to monitor it as much as they can. Encourage their officials, their staff. If they don't feel well for any reason whatsoever, let's back out of a game. If we have to have, I'll just use fall as an example. If we have to play a football game with only 6 officials, if we have to play a soccer game with only 2, then that's what we have to do. If one has to bow out on the way to the game, or if when they arrive on campus, they show symptoms or have some sort of contact tracing that would put them and others at risk, then they need to bow out. But again, long answer to a very short question. We don't have a policy specifically, but we will have, again, probably some minimum standards. But I'd like to think each school is going to address this how they feel necessary to have visitors on their campus.
Thank you, sir. Next question here from Steve Charles. Once a vaccine is available, will there be a policy to address requirements that athletes and coaches be vaccinated?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer at this point. I have no clue, honestly. I don't even know where we are with the vaccine. I'd have to ask some of our schools, do they require that for polio or chickenpox? Current vaccinations, are those required? I have no clue on that, but that's certainly something. Once a vaccine is up and running and available, I think we will certainly have that conversation. Whether it will be mandated or not, I can't answer that.
All right. Anybody else have a question at this time? Commissioner Britz, any other updates you would like to give just on the conference in general outside of COVID-19 or anything like that?
Is there anything else going on?
Is there anything else to talk about? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we're continuing to try to conduct business as usual as much as we can. We're still actively pursuing a potential 14th member, which would get us to 2 divisions of 7. We're hoping that something public will be announced in the next several months on that. I think we just continue to try to, it's funny because our current strategic plan is scheduled to end at the end of this upcoming academic year. So we were scheduled to spend a good portion of this coming academic year to develop a new one. We decided to delay that a year, and I think our new strategic plan is to stay alive and stay viable as a conference. Our goal is to just keep everyone open at this point and keep their students safe and healthy, and allow them to continue to pursue their academic and athletic endeavors. But it's hard because a lot of the initiatives like sportsmanship and the leadership initiatives and things like that we're so focused on just sort of pale in comparison right now. So while we'd like to do them, we don't really have the resources to do them. Our schools don't have the resources to do them. So we're just focused on trying to get this season going and play as much as possible and as safely as possible. But the membership piece will be there. We did actually, during this pandemic, we did sign a sponsorship agreement with Hometown Ticketing. We're close to maybe signing another sponsorship agreement with another company, which I don't want to disclose at this point. So we're trying to do some things like that. Christian and I took a visit to a baseball stadium yesterday. We did wear masks. I don't want to get yelled at about that. As a potential for our baseball championship if we do have to move from the Smokies Stadium. So, we're trying to do some things like that as much as we can, but it is a challenge. And I think everyone on campus and in conference offices and at the national office is so focused on this right now um, than it is hard. I will say I got an email earlier today that all the playing sports committees, the football rules committee, volleyball rules committee, soccer, etc., have been asked to start reviewing rules that could help reduce the spread of this. So one example that's come to mind is in football. The team areas run from the 25 to the 25, if I'm not mistaken. So there's been discussion of maybe extending those from the 10 to the 10, so the teams are on top of each other, like they are, currently, especially those with large rosters. Um, I think the officials, they like that 20 for, the red zone. They from the 20 into the goal line. They like that to be their space. They don't have to worry about anybody, tripping them or tripping over wires or anything. But I think from a health and safety standpoint, that's one that they could maybe adjust for 1 year. Volleyball, we may not be switching benches after every game. Soccer, I think what some of the things I've seen with soccer is, you have the ball persons on the sidelines that, as long as they aren't watering the ball down to where it gets so heavy, maybe they can sanitize them every time they come out. They have a stand or a bucket that they put them on so they're not constantly being touched, and things like that. So, all sorts of things that people are talking about and maybe trying to adjust from a health and safety standpoint, at least for a 1 year period.
All right, we just gotten one more question here, and this
Mm-hmm.
may be our one of our last ones here as we're running out of our time here. This one's from Kelly. It says, with no mandated testing and many non-symptomatic people carrying COVID, how can we mitigate the spread? And then how are fans being handled? It's concerned about sports like football and field hockey too, where kids are exposed or are carrying it back to schools and such. So what about shaking hands after the games? And what would it take to delay or end fall seasons altogether?
There's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack in that one. Sorry.
Yeah, let's start with the shaking hands. I don't think you're going to see any shaking of hands after games for quite some time. As much as that's a good sign of sportsmanship, I think that practice is going to be done for the near future in all sports. The fans attending the games, those are going to be up to the schools. We may have a situation, if we're even allowed to have fans at all, that we may run into a situation where there's no visiting fans that are permitted to enter. That the home games will be focused on the home fans, and that's it. Just from a social distancing standpoint, a lot of our venues are tight as it is, and if we start trying to mess around with that, we could run into some situations. And to be quite honest, I'm more focused on, we got to get the games going before we worry about the fans. So if we're able to play a few games in September and then the fans come into the equation later in the season, that's great. But the fans attending is irrelevant if we can't even get the games going at this point. What it would take to end the season, I think is, I think it's going to take some cases, positive cases on campuses, and I think we're going to have that. There's no question about it, and we may very well likely have some games that get canceled because of it. If a school has a situation where had a significant outbreak and they can't field an appropriate team, or they don't feel safe going somewhere, or someone doesn't feel safe competing against them, then those are situations we're going to have to handle and address. And if we only get 75% of our games in as opposed to 100%, that's what happens. But we're able to get some games in and we move forward. Again, the whole point of this season, this year, not just this season, is to survive. And I've said it, I think I said it on the last call. if we don't have national championships, but we're able to compete the majority of the conference season and have conference championships, then I'll consider that a win at this point, because we've got to be able to figure this out somehow, some way. And we've got to allow these students the opportunity to participate in their sport as well as go to school. Um, so I don't know if that answered everything, but I think I unpacked it all there.
You got most of it. There is a follow up from Kelly as well. Will schools have to report their positive cases?
I would think we're going to be, as a conference, we're going to be as transparent as we can on that. And I think certainly, obviously we won't be naming names, but I think they will have to report, we had a couple test positive, and we'll need to inform, the ones that they just competed against and then their future opponents as well. To what extent that, conversation will be, I can't answer that, but I think a short answer on that is yes, there will be an expectation to report positive cases for sure.
All right. And one final question here from Tyrone Anderson. He wants to know, will there be a cap on the amount of fans allowed in stadiums?
Yeah, Tyrone, I think definitely if we are allowed to have fans, there's definitely going to be a minimum. I don't see any way possible in the near future that our stadiums and arenas, gyms will be able to be filled to capacity. There's definitely going to have to be a percentage on that. I mean, like North Carolina right now, it's 25. Can't even be in there. I think that includes the teams. So, unless those get lifted pretty significantly, I think we're definitely going to have a cap on the number of fans that attend games.
All right. Well, seeing how we don't want to have our session cut off like it did last time for us, I'm going to cut the questions off there. But thank you, Commissioner Britz, and thank you for everybody for joining us tonight. We will probably do this again another month from now. We'll post our next time here in the coming weeks. But any final thoughts there, Commissioner?
No, I do hope that in a month from now, maybe I'll be a little more optimistic like I was a month ago. But I do hope everyone enjoys the rest of their summer. I hope everyone had a safe and happy 4th of July, and we can get through this and, just get started. I think all of us are just tired of living in this world of hypotheticals and, saying, I don't know, and we'll have to wait and see. But, I think we're definitely in the 7th inning stretch of a baseball game as far as trying to make some hard decisions and some determinations. So, I think we'll keep moving forward. And as I said in the release announcing that we were going to do this one, the main thing for this, there's two main things. We want to be as open and transparent as we can for anybody who's interested. And secondly, we just want to let people know that regardless of the decision that is made, if it's cancel the fall, postpone the fall, whatever it is not done just because everyone else is doing it. It's because we feel as a conference that is what is best for us as a league. And I think that's what we always try to do. We always try to make decisions that are based on the best interest of the South Atlantic Conference, irrespective of what other leagues or what other divisions or anything else is doing. We try to focus on what is best for us and how we can best manage it. And if that means that we are able to participate and the majority of the other conferences aren't, we are doing it because we feel we're safe, we're able to do it, and that's in the best interest of the league. If we end up having to postpone or stop or cancel altogether, again, we're doing that based on the best interest of the league and irrespective.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Hope everybody has a great night. And we'll see you again a month from now on our next episode of our Q&A with Commissioner Britz. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.